what is going on, everybody? How's it hanging? How's it happening? You guys know who it is. This is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast, brought to you by My Song a Day Rock 2000. Today is Tuesday, February 11th of 2020, and well, I've got a special surprise for you today. But before I go on my special surprise for you guys today, you guys know I have to talk about my shameless plugs. So, of course, the shameless plug section is the section where, hell, if I had some kind of, fun and good old-fashioned, fun and good old-fashioned advertisements, I'd put them here, but I don't, so I'm just going to plug the My Song a Day stuff. So for My Song a Day Rock 2000 a day, keep my legs down because, that's a little secret for the IG live crew. I said I was going to reveal my legs once I hit 3,000 followers. That's kind of funny, so we'll see how we get on that. But follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Links to stuff in the description below. Facebook, anytime anything gets released from the podcast to the... Oh my God, that's loud. Oh, I'll take that out in post-production. Anytime, the podcast gets released, anytime the YouTube videos get released, anytime the Song of the Day 30-second preview, it needs to be put out there. You're going to find that on Facebook. Twitter, you're going to find out the same stuff, but it's a great place to talk to us. Instagram, like I said earlier, is our biggest thing. So when it comes to Instagram, what you can do with Instagram is you can see the 30-second Song of the Day preview. You can watch your IGTV videos every single Tuesday at Tuesday night, pretty much. And it's a behind-the-scenes look at what we're doing here. Instagram Live every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central, where it's an hour. You come talk to us, and we just have one hell of a time. And then we also ask you questions on there. It's a great place to, be part of the rock music community. And TikTok, we just do fun stuff on there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, where you can watch this podcast along with watch our album reviews, our band reviews, any kind of YouTube stuff we put out there. Videos come out every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. And sometimes we do some special ones as well. So, yeah. And also with the podcast, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and watch it on YouTube, actually. So link to us in the description below. So is our Amazon Alexa skill. Yeah. So with our Amazon Alexa skill, what you can do with that, or did she start? I don't know. But what you can do with that is you can listen to the whole entire Song of the Day selection. Now, with the Song of the Day selections, it's the best way to rediscover all that old rock and metal music that you used to love. Discover new stuff that has come out that you're going to love. Rekindle your love for rock music. And on Saturdays, we feature our small bands that send us our stuff. And it's like, hey, can you feature us? You can get in the know with these small bands. So listen to all that stuff. Subscribe to it. Follow it, whatever it is, link description below for everything. But now, like I said, I have a surprise for you guys today. And my surprise is I have a special guest. What? Do I have a special guest? Yes, I do. So before the whole entire thing started, before this podcast started, I put out some on the day, like 2 days before I was going to record this, saying, hey, does anyone want to talk about on the Chord Progression Podcast about the new Green Day album, Father of All Motherfuckers? And someone responded. His name is Matthew Kalb. He's from New Jersey, and he has his own band called Atomic Battery. They play a hard rock and metal style, and he was more than happy to talk with us about Green Day with Father of All Motherfuckers. So be prepared to listen to him because he comes in and we look at the album in a completely different way. He looked at it with much more of an instrumental side of everything. I looked at much more of a composition and how the themes and the styles of the music and how everything that was said before the album and how it plays together. So you get to see two different takes on the album. You get to listen to two different takes on the album. So let's get going. Matthew Kalb right now. Let's go! Dude, what is up, Matthew? How's it going? Welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
Hey, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Alrighty, so before we get started talking about all things with the new Green Day album, Father of All Motherfuckers, and go through all that stuff, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are, what you do, and, why you want to talk about the new Green Day album.
Alright, well, my name is Matthew Kalb, and I'm a guitarist and vocalist, and I'm the guitarist for my band Atomic Battery, and I have some solo stuff as well. I'm more into metal, all kinds of metal really, but I mean Green Day, I appreciate Green Day. They kind of were one of the bands that got me into rock and metal in the first place, like when I was still, transitioning. So that I appreciate. I appreciate them musically. I don't listen to them much, but I was like, hey, they're coming out with a new album. That's cool. I'll give it a listen.
Alrighty, so like when you first started listening to Green Day, what were the albums that you were really listening to, and what songs really, when you listened, you just thought, whoa, okay, I'm absolutely loving this.
Mm-hmm. I didn't listen to them like hardcore. It was more like 2 or 3 songs, like, like pretty much the big stuff, like American Idiot. That was probably my favorite song by them. That one, like, I listened to it, I was like, whoa, this is really good. I really like this. And then, there's also Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Wake Me Up When September Ends, stuff like that.
So pretty much a lot of the stuff just off of that American Idiot album was
pretty
really
much, yeah,
brought you into the fold.
Yeah.
Alright, did you listen to anything like before American Idiot, like from their, 90s stuff, especially with their album Dookie?
Yes, I've listened to a little bit of it. I can't like name specific songs, but I do remember listening to the album thinking, oh yeah, this is cool. I like this.
I mean, if I played songs like Basket Case, When I Come Around, and Welcome to Paradise, I'm almost dead certain you know them, especially Basket Case.
Yeah, Basket Case, I know that song. Yeah.
I would say their second most popular song, because I think once American Idiot came out, like American Idiot, I still remember when it came out, because this was when it came out when I was in 4th grade, so I was 10 years old when it came out. I mean, that album and that song just literally took pop culture by storm. It was just absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. And then if you listen to really anything of theirs, like since American Idiot, so I'm talking about 21st Century Breakdown album, where they did the Uno Dos Tres album back in like the end of 2012, beginning 2013, and then Revolution Radio, which was their most previous release before Fatherball Motherfuckers back in 2016.
I may have heard bits and pieces. I don't think I set out to go listen to them, but I wouldn't be surprised if I've heard some of the songs on those albums.
Okay, because I didn't really listen to much of like 21st Century Breakdown, because there's like 1 or 2 songs I think I really listened to. When the Uno Dos Tres thing came out, I listened to Uno more, and then I'm like, once Dos and Tres came, I'm like, what's going on here? Like, I thought it was rushed. Once Revolution Radio came out, I'm like, okay, they're kind of going back to that kind of fold that they were going in, kind of like the Back to the Roots album. Mm-hmm. And while I wasn't like the biggest fan of the whole entire album, because I've never been like the quintessential, like, oh my god, like, I gotta listen to Green Day, I can't get enough of Green Day.
Right.
That was an album like, okay, at least they're kind of going back to what they were, best known for, and where they really get a lot of that raw emotion for their kind of like punk rock, pop punk style to come out, especially with the titular song off the album Revolution Radio. Mm. But already enough with the little like pleasantries before going into the album. So now on Fatherball Motherfuckers, because I remember still looking at this album thinking, okay, take a look at the album cover. I mean, It's literally a unicorn puking rainbows.
Yeah. Interesting choice.
Like, what did you think about that looking at it?
I don't know. I first looked at it, I was like, huh. Yeah, that, like, the unicorn stood out. I was like, huh, okay, that's interesting. And then also, like, the text on the arm, I was like, okay, is that like self-harm, or is that just like, I'm not really sure. And then I also noticed a cool thing. It looks like at the bottom of the palm, it looks kind of like the grenade in American Idiot, which I thought was cool.
Kind of referencing that whole grenade logo. I actually like that as well. I remember looking up some of the stuff, of course, going through my whole entire review, because I've already shot the YouTube review for the album and really went through it to really look at it. When I saw things talking about, the album cover and what they were going for, what Billy Joe Armstrong said was like, they were gonna go in after somewhere it's like, just not really giving a shit or really giving a fuck. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, he said, what's more, I don't care, I don't give a shit, I don't give a fuck, than a unicorn.
That's true.
So I kind of looked at that, thought, you know what?
Yeah,
all right.
Works. Yeah.
That's some funny shit. And I kind of looked at a couple other things like going into the album as well, because of course, before we, once they announced it, I mean, they announced that hella mega tour with Fall Out Boy and Weezer that I know they just recently added more dates, especially in like countries like Australia and New Zealand. They have that 2-year partnership now with the NHL. They just performed about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago at the NHL All-Star game. And Billy Joe Armstrong dropped a couple of F-bombs during the performance that was being shown on NBC, and some people were like, oh my god, why would they do that? And the NHL kind of looked at it and said, yeah, we were expecting that. And they didn't give a shit, but it's hockey, you ain't gonna give a shit.
Yeah.
It's like, yes. But one other thing I saw that really kind of stuck out to me was in an interview, like I saw Billy Joe Armstrong kind of talk about this, trying to bring the balls back to rock music. Cause I looked at them like, okay, there's some like the real popular rock bands that are, you know, basically it's like, okay, people are really listening to that you're seeing on the radio, stuff like Fall Out Boy or Panic at the Disco, or
Right.
even though I think they're just straight pop right now.
I kind of agree with that, yeah.
5, but like there really is no balls to that kind of a substance, where there's stuff that I listen to more or less, or stuff that I feature on my page where I'm like, if more people would listen to this, like, you gotta listen to the balls on this stuff. Like, this is insanity.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree,
yeah.
I mean, hell, I'm wearing a Rise Against shirt right now.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, see, yeah, that's kind of my issue with a lot of, like, popular rock, is like, okay, you call yourselves rock, where's the electric guitar? Like, that's cool, the song's good, but like, where's the electric guitar, you know?
Yeah, well, especially you take a look at, like, I'm going to use like music festivals as an example, because you take a look at the real popular ones that people always know about. So it's like Coachella, Lollapalooza. I'm even going to throw Summerfest here in Milwaukee there, because I mean, I know it's big, but I don't think it's as like well known as those other ones. I mean, we get 1 million people through the gates every single year.
Yeah.
And lately you look at like that, who they're putting there, and it's like the bands they consider rock bands. It's just like, wait. Like, this isn't rock. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Because last year at Summerfest, I remember we had like the 3 bands I remember being like the quote unquote like rock bands. There was one night they had, Silverstein was there, which was kind of cool. And they were opening up for August Burns Red. And well, I've got fun stories about that, where we tipped up the benches there so we could have more room to mosh. That was
nice. That's cool.
They had New Year's Day there that just like randomly showed up out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, okay. Huh. And then, they had Skillet there one night. So I'm like, okay, but that was really all they had for, you know, rock band. That I'm like, okay, this is actually rock. Or, you know, when you pull in, August Burns Red, that's a lot more metalcore on that end.
Yeah.
But then you take a look at like Lollapalooza and Coachella, and it's like the bands they consider rock bands there, especially this year, it's completely non-existent, with the exception of Rage Against the Machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, but then you take a look at like those Danny Wimmer Presents festivals. I'm talking about Epicenter, Welcome to Rockville, Sonic Temple, Louder Than Life, and Aftershock. And you just take a look and see kind of the bands that they're pulling in there, and especially like the supporting acts. I'm like, now that's rock and roll. Like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They're bringing in bands like,
rock.
I mean, you've got Metallica headlining 2 nights at each of those shows, but then you have, you know, like their other headliners that they've announced right now. I think Disturbed's got 2 of them. Slipknot has 1 of them, and then one of the festival at the end of the year that they're doing, or in October, is their last one with Aftershock. It's My Chemical Romance. So it's like, okay, you're bringing in more people there. I hope for Louder Than Life they pull in a band like A Day to Remember, because I think that'd just be insane.
That'd be cool, yeah.
But then you take a look at the supporting acts below. It's like, you know, you got Alter Bridge, Saint Asonia, which is much more, you know, just hard rock, which is just fantastic. But you see some other bands too, like more metalcore bands, like I'm seeing Motionless in White appear a couple of times. Ice Nine Kills appear a couple of times. I'm just like, okay, like that's what we're talking about. So we're talking about like balls being brought back to rock. It's there. Yeah. It's just not well known to the masses, but Green Day is well known to the masses, especially because of, American Idiot was a cultural phenomenon to the point where everyone knew it was on the pop rock stations. It was on the rock stations.
Yeah.
I mean, they made a Broadway musical off the album, for God's sakes.
They did? I didn't know that. That's
culture
cool.
Can you hack?
Yeah, seriously. That's awesome.
But then went through and listened to this album a couple of times, and now let's get into it. So when you first listened to the album, when you went through it your first time, what was your first impression with Father of All Motherfuckers?
I think, so from a musical standpoint, I really enjoyed it wasn't quite what I was expecting. I don't really know what I was expecting, but it wasn't quite that. Like, the drum intro, especially, you know, for Father of All, the title track, right? Was really cool. It was like, not your standard drum intro. I don't really know how to describe it. I wasn't expecting that. I also liked how you could hear a lot of bass. There were a lot of, you know, lots of times with rock songs and metal songs, stuff like that, like, the bass is just kind of like subtle in the background, like, sort of following the guitars. It's there, and it's definitely a good thing to be there, but it doesn't really have its own thing. But there was a lot of bass that was independent from the guitar, which I really liked.
Yeah, especially like one thing I remember going through this album, one thing that stood out to me from the first listen through was Trey Cool's drumming, and especially some of those transitional fills that he did in between the songs. So whether doing a couple of those little transitions between, you know, different choruses to the verses, or from pre-chorus to the chorus, a lot of the times they did those, I thought they were rather simple, but they were like simple yet complex to the point where they really stood out on the album. And I gotta say, it was definitely needed on it because it was really a shining light throughout the whole entire thing. While I don't think, every song had the perfect drum track or perfect drum fill, I think Tré Cool's drumming was the most consistent thing on this album.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool.
So, cause we were talking about the lead single with Father of All, I gotta ask you about Billy Joe Armstrong's vocals on this one because it was something that was completely different than anything we'd heard from him. So, cause he uses a much like higher falsetto tone voice.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
That also I wasn't expecting. Yeah, I was expecting more of the other stuff. And yeah, I wasn't expecting the higher stuff. And even going into falsetto, I also just unexpected. Cool. I definitely liked it. It was unique and different and cool, but not expected. And it was cool. He was still also had some of his old vocal style. He did go down a bit more too. It was, mostly up. He still did go down. I liked both of those. That was cool.
Yeah, especially as you went through the album too, because it was like the first couple of songs and the singles, it was much more that higher falsetto tone voice. But as you went further along in the album, it kind of leveled out back to what we were expecting normally from Billy Joe Armstrong, especially, again, listen to stuff like Revolution Radio or American Idiot because it's rather consistent throughout that. I mean, it's going to be a little bit different if you listen to stuff off of Dookie just because, again, we're dealing with almost a 25, 26 year gap at that point.
Right.
So, of course, vocals might change up a little bit. Very rarely are you going to find someone who like sounds almost the exact same from when they first started to, today. I think the one example I can think of someone that really sounds almost, identical is Ben Burnley of Breaking Benjamin.
Yeah, he does.
So when I looked at that, I thought, you know what? It was very interesting, but I gotta say, I really couldn't stand the vocals from, Father of All from the first track, from the lead single. And the reason for that was because when I listened to it, the first thing that came to mind was this, like the verses, they sounded like, like if Green Day tried to remake, Rebel Just for Kicks by Portugal the Man. I couldn't get it out of my head. It sounded just almost like they they tried to just like bring that out. And I just thought, they just can't get out of my head. It's stuck in there so long. It just kind of ruined the song for me in a way.
Huh. Yeah. I don't think I know that song. So I don't know. I liked it. Maybe I would enjoy it less if I saw that, parallel or maybe appreciate it. I don't know. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I thought it was again, not something I would typically listen to, but, I did enjoy like listening to something different, and that single was good, I thought.
Okay. Yeah. See, I think you and I kind of differ on that end, but of course that's the greatness in talking about this stuff because then you can see what everyone else thinks, where on my end with it, it's just something that completely took me out of the track where I was expecting a little bit more, especially from that drum intro from Tré. I was expecting more of that like haywire punk sound. And all we got in that sound was like from the drumming and then from what I thought the guitar solo brought on that song. We got that more haywire punk sound. But then throughout the rest of it, I'm like, you know what? This just, I just couldn't get the Portugal the Man thing out of my head. It just stuck in there so long that I'm just like, you know what? I can't help it. It's ruining for me.
That's fair.
So a couple other, more onto the album because, well, the single that they ended up playing during the, what was it called? The, NHL All-Star game was Fire Ready Aim. I said Billy Joe Armstrong dropped a couple of F-bombs during the performance. Just because they're using that one as the intro to NBCSN Wednesday Night Hockey. And that's much, and, if they're going to be focusing on that, we got to talk about it. So what did you think of that song?
I liked it. I liked what they did with the title. I mean, usually Ready Aim Fire, but Fire Ready Aim. I don't know. I thought that was a cool, like, switch. Let's see. I don't remember exactly. I've only listened to it like 2 or 3 times. So I don't remember it like exactly what happens in that song. I do remember appreciating it and thinking, oh yeah, this is a cool little song.
It was interesting, and one thing that I do, and I'll probably speak about this more on the album too, but especially with this song, one thing I really liked about it was, especially with that Fire Ready Aim mentality, and that the song's all about, like daily outrage of people attacking others without thinking. So it's like, like tagging others on social media, like saying like, oh no, you're wrong, I'm right, and you don't even like you're just responding, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about it afterwards. It's like kind of like think before you act instead of act before you think, which is
That's
kind of
cool.
a thing they're really going off of in today's culture. And I'm going to probably talk about this on a bunch of other songs too, but this one is kind of the one that started out with the style of music and the kind of like the styles they were trying to emulate on certain songs and the themes of them, I thought worked out tremendously. And this was another one because they started out with more of like a classic, raw punk rock song, and then kind of transitioned to more of like their clean and crisp style of like pop punk.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, you're kind of bringing that in. The one thing that stood out to me was they brought in a piano for it, especially during the chorus. And it sounded a lot like that, like 1950s Jerry Lee Lewis piano from like songs like Great Balls of Fire. And I just looked at, thought it's kind of like that, haywire stuff, think like act before you think kind of mentality with the music. And then also dropping back to the history from Jerry Lee Lewis and what all happened with him in his career. It really kind of like, it blew me away with the fact that they put that together and kind of made a song off of that kind of style.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool.
And I'm just going to jump around a couple because that wasn't the only one that they did that on. I'll go to the next single, Oh Yeah, where I like looking at the song and looking at what they were talking about, because they were talking about America's obsession with social media and how you see a lot of those like social media personalities or social media influencers where they're always posting. It looks like they have like the greatest life ever.
Yeah.
But
they don't.
Reality, it's they're just like depressed and stuff like that, or reality.
Yeah.
The way they seem. And what I really liked about that was I thought they went with more of like that pop rock and pop centric kind of style, where I don't really care for that style, but when you mix it in with that meaning, because if you go on social media, if you look at all these major influencers, one thing you're going to see a lot of different like videos or posts or anything, and they all feature like, like music that's very popular. So a lot of pop, a lot of EDM, and they use that kind of like, they brought in a couple of synthesizers in there as well. So just kind of mixing all that together with the theme, I thought, hey, if you're gonna talk about that and then you're gonna pull off something like this, that really works well together to gain more popularity in the masses to get them to listen to this kind of song.
Yeah. Yeah, and spread the message. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and a couple of other ones that they did that on. I gotta speak about one of them specifically. I gotta find out which one it is though, because it's the song called "Stab You in the Heart." This was later on in the album. Yeah. The one thing that blew me away on this one, and I really want to get your take on this one as well, because this song was like, had like an angry narrator in it that wanted to basically like stab his wife over, infidelity and cheating on him. And I looked at like the song and was listening to it, and it sounded like it was inspired by like the 1950s, and specifically Little Richard's Tutti Frutti, which is ridiculous to put it together. But the contrast of, someone wanting to, murder their wife over her cheating on him. Yeah. And bringing up a style of music that during that time, that topic would be considered completely taboo and would not be talked about. Just the contrast of the styles, it really doesn't seem like it would make a lot of sense, but that kind of like rock and roll from the 50s, the twanginess of it, and just what they were talking about, it mixed incredibly well together.
Yeah, I thought that too. Yeah, I listened to that song. I was like, okay, this is cool. Oh, this sounds like classic rock and roll. And it's back into modern sound. Like, yeah, I agree. That was a really cool twist and just real cool blend that, yeah, you wouldn't expect to work, but it really did. Yeah, I really appreciated that mix.
There are a couple other things too I was looking at, of course, looking online at what other people were saying about the album. And that seemed like another high point too, because people were just completely, thrown off by the fact that they'd pull out that kind of a style. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, boom, here it is. Yeah. And I do have to mention Trey's drumming once again on this one, because the 50s inspiration and kind of just the drums where they're not going to be very prominent. It's just going to be like the hi-hat hitting the 1 and 2 end, and then the bass drum on the 1, snare drum on the 2, bass on the 3, snare on the 4, just very consistent. Yeah. They use that drum track pretty much throughout the whole entire song. And looking at, I'm like, that drum track, I wish there was more of it, but given the context of what they were going off in the song and what the inspiration was, you can't go with anything else. They really hit the nail on the head with that one.
I agree. Yeah, that was a good song.
Any other songs that like really like stood out to you at all on this album?
Let's see. Yeah. What was it? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Also, really, I don't know what. Just I guess the hook. Oh yeah. That thing. Like for some reason, when I first listened to it, I felt like I had heard it before, and like not just from recently. Like it almost felt like that feeling when you hear a song and you're like, I remember this from like my childhood, and it was kind of like that. I'm not really sure why, because came out yesterday, but I don't know. That was a cool little thing. That song stuck out to me.
Yeah, for me, because I know I mentioned it earlier, where I wasn't the biggest fan of it just because of all the pop rock and pop centric kind of inspiration behind it, which is something that I really don't gravitate towards. However, like I said earlier, mixing it with the theme, I mean, it made sense.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most consistent things on the album was when they took that theme and they mix it with a different style to really match it up together. I thought almost every single time they really worked well on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm also not usually a pop rock or pop style person either. But yeah, I agree. It worked somehow. It worked.
Alrighty, was there a song on this album where when you listened to it, you just thought, nope, 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 no, just no, no?
Not really. I mean, again, this isn't something I would typically listen to, so I can't see myself really listening to it much in general. But I was more, when I was listening to it, I was more kind of in the mindset of, okay, I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to see what positive things I can think about it, because normally I wouldn't listen to this anyway. So I'm going to listen to it like with a musical ear, figure out just what they used and how they used it and try to appreciate it that way. So not really. Like it all had electric guitar in it. It all had elements of rock in it. There was nothing straight up pop. If there was like straight up pop, then yeah, that probably would have happened. But no, I think they were all enjoyable.
All right, because again, this is one thing I love about doing a podcast like this and talking to people about this album, because there's going to be times where we don't agree on everything, or there's times where we do agree on stuff. And on something where, me asking a question like, is there a song that stuck out to you that you really didn't care for? Or you're saying, not really. For me, there were a couple that really stood out. I just thought, what's really going on here? And I'll mention, two of them. One was, I was a teenager, and what I couldn't stand about the song was the purpose of the song was to talk about going through puberty and, growing up, a very typical trope in a lot of Green Day songs.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing I couldn't really get behind it was if you take a look at how the, vocals and the lyrics are constructed, you get a pre-chorus, a chorus, you get the same pre-chorus again, then you get the chorus, and you get the chorus again. So especially when you're talking about something that a lot of people, have gone through, especially if they're, my age at, the ripe age of 25,
right.
Or people that are on like going through it or might be on the tail end of it. It's just something where it's like, if you're really kind of like trying to talk about that's something where there's a lot of confusion, a lot going on, and you're really simplifying it down to something like that. And especially because I remember looking at an interview that they were talking about it, and it was everyone went through a completely different style between all three members of the band, and they kind of just narrow it into something like that. It really stuck out to me as something that was just bland.
Okay, I can see that. I didn't pay too much attention to the vocals of that song. I was more trying to listen to like the instruments. I can see where you're coming from though.
Yeah, it's something where, especially with seeing what Green Day can do with that kind of a motive or a meaning, because we've seen them use it a good amount of times. I mean, take a look at a song like, I'll use When I Come Around as an example, because that is a song that really dives deep into that. It just has much more substance to it, in my opinion, and I like it more. Or, even we'll go with stuff like Boulevard of Broken Dreams. It just, because again, it could be considered something similar to that, where it's, you're going through kind of like a changing period. And I just think there's just much more to it. This one, it just didn't feel like there was really much to it, especially on a topic where we know that they go through that a lot more, and it just seemed like oh, here it is.
That's true. I can agree with that. There wasn't as much going on as with some of the other songs, so I can see that. I agree with that. And it probably, honestly, I still enjoyed it, but it probably was one of the weaker songs on the album, I think. I think probably my top songs were the title track, Fire Ready Aim, Oh Yeah, and Stab You in the Heart. Those were probably my 4 favorite. And the other ones were kind of like range from good to alright, you know? I wouldn't say there were any bad tracks, but there was certainly a spectrum of better songs to not as good songs.
Okay, one other track that I couldn't really get behind was the final track on the album, which was Graffitia or whatever the heck.
Oh yeah.
I was looking at it, what it was talking about, because the first part of the song, it really is more of a commentary about, I think I saw this in another article as well, about factories closing in the Rust Belt in the late 70s and 80s. So a lot of those factories, in like Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Michigan, Illinois, that were closing down. And then they also were talking about black male teens being shot in Chicago. So they kind of mixed that two kind of style together. But they went with much more of like this uplifting tone at the end of the album. And I've seen, like I spoke about earlier, where different styles where, you're kind of going off of a style that's like the Stab You in the Heart, where it's something that a style doesn't really match up with the meaning of the song or what they're really talking about, but that contrast works well. This was one where that contrast did not work well, and I had another problem with something similar to this on Wage War's album Pressure, because Wage War's album was talking about a lot of different heavier things and trying to overcome them, like depression, suicide, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the end of their album, there was a song that was I think it was called Where Do We Go From Here? And it was just very downtrodden and depressing. And I thought, when you're trying to build up a lot of people, and these songs are really building up people, giving them substance to go through some things, the end of that album just sounded like, you didn't get through them and you were defeated by them. And I felt like that kind of could be said here, but not in the same way. This one, you're talking about something a lot heavier, but then at the end of it, it's like uplifting. I was like, wait, what? It really just kind of got me to think that the end of the album, it left a real sour taste in my mouth as I got to the end of it, even though it was only 26 minutes long. I didn't have to slog through the whole entire thing like I have some other albums. But once I got to the end of this, I'm just like, wait, what?
Yeah, I get that. I didn't have much of an opinion on that song, however you pronounce it, Graffitia, whatever. Yeah, not much of an opinion. Again, enjoyed it, but didn't think too much of it, really.
Alrighty, then the last song we'll go through before you and I both give our review or rating on a scale of 0 to 10, and then we'll talk about overall kind of stuff, is the song that honestly was probably my favorite on the album, which was Sugar Youth.
Okay.
And the reason behind that, in my opinion, was it kind of brought back a little bit more of the classic, Green Day pop punk style. I mean, back from what they kind of expected from, mixing Dookie, American Idiot together. So I kind of like that. And it just, it meshed with the whole motif of the album of really talking about something, not really caring. Because I know at the beginning of the album, we could have gone after, things that a lot of people were going after, President Donald Trump, but they thought that'd been too easy. So they wanted to give something more of a not caring feel of an album. Mm-hmm. And they were kind of bringing in more of that pop punk chaos that a lot of people really listened to Green Day when they were younger. So when they were teenagers or going through high school, going through puberty, going through all that kind of stuff. And that pop punk style was really prominent, especially for, even though myself, when I got into high school, all that pop punk stuff was on the tail end. When I was in middle school, that was all at the forefront. It was bands like Fall Out Boy, Blink-182, All Time Low, Good Charlotte, Paramore just jumped into the scene. So this is 2006, 2007.
Right.
And when the whole entire, point of that song was they're talking about, someone a high school boy that has incredible anxiety of not wanting to go to a party alone, but still wanting to go to that party to try and get laid. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, that's classic high school stuff right there.
Yeah.
And bringing in that, more classic Green Day angst into a song like this, and keeping it under 2 minutes. I'm like, now this was something I was expecting from the band, and I really did enjoy listening to it.
Okay. Again, I don't have too much of an opinion on that. I didn't listen to it in that lens, but now that you say that, yeah, I can totally see that. That is cool.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've actually enjoyed so far about this conversation was when you were looking at these tracks and when I was looking at these tracks, we were looking at them in a very different way.
Yeah.
And with you, especially with you being a guitarist and vocalist, you were looking at it in much more of a instrumental and construction way.
Yeah.
Whereas
definitely.
myself, I was looking at it in part with that way, but I was looking at, kind of how the meanings and the themes of the song really mix with the styles that they went with, along with a lot of the vocal track. I did make some references to the instrumentation and the composition of each song, but I don't think I went into it nearly as much in detail as you did.
Yeah, that is cool. I like that difference, that contrast. We can both get something out of that. That was cool.
And that's the beauty of music too, and that's why a lot of people, especially that I talk to, I mean, when it comes to bands that we like, there's bands that I like that they absolutely hate. There's bands that they like that I absolutely just can't stand. But it's all relative to how the music hits your ears and how you respond to it. I mean, hell, a lot of times I'll put out, like on Thursdays, okay, I got two bands that are kind of like each other already. You pick, like I ask people, pick your favorite and tell me why kind of thing. Yeah. And it's always fun to see the responses come back and forth. Cause and then even with like other people in bands too, vocalists, cause I remember I think one of the biggest ones I had was I asked people, who do you prefer, Amy Lee of Evanescence or Sharon Den Adele within Temptation? And oh man, it was like everyone was split on that one.
Yeah.
But it was great to see the differences. Or I asked, recently, okay, who do you like more, Green Day or Sum 41?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing what people were saying about that, it was like, well, we liked Green Day beforehand, but we like Sum 41 more now, or it was vice versa. I'm like, okay, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So and then there's bands that I talk about all the time that it's just like, some people are like, okay, you got it. Like, can you talk about this band, this band, this band? I got someone that always comments on my stuff that's like, every time I post something, he always posts like some like death metal or black metal band that he absolutely loves, like as an answer. And I love the fact that he does it because it just keeps everything interesting.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I love the fact that we're talking about music. Of course, we don't agree on the kind of music that we like, but I love the fact that we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let's get to the big reveal. So overall, scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the worst. Imagine 0 being like, you're at an airport and your plane gets delayed, it gets canceled, you have to wait at the airport that whole entire night, and you're just not happy about it. That's a 0. Okay. A 10 is, you get on the airplane and you get bumped up to first class for free on an international flight.
Okay.
So kind of, I always have fun with that kind of stuff. So on that scale of 0 to 10, where would you rate this album?
Probably a 6.
A 6. Okay. I am definitely below you on that. I put it as a 4.5.
Okay.
Okay. So in the overall grand scheme of things, we talked about a lot. So can you summarize what was what you really liked about this album?
Okay. Well, so first off, the reason I gave it a 6 is, so I'm thinking like, in terms of, okay, 5 is like the breaking point. Like 1 through 4 is like, I didn't like it, or it was okay. 5's like, it's okay. And then 6 to 10 is like, okay, I enjoyed it. And it was the spectrum of how much you enjoyed it versus didn't enjoy it. And so I give it a 6 because I don't think it was too memorable. I enjoyed listening to it. I think there were elements that were good. But overall, it, again, wasn't something I typically listen to. Wasn't something that I enjoyed immensely. So, but I still enjoyed every song. So that, I think, is why I gave it a 6.
Okay, for myself, things I liked about it, just in review, Trey Cool's drumming, especially those drum fills, really like that. I know I spoke about it. A couple of songs you can hear that is like Fire Ready Aim, Sugar Youth, and just like the kind of haywire punk style that his drumming had on Father of All. I talked about it a good amount already with you, with how they mix a lot of themes and with different styles that really pertain to those themes. It's like I said with like Sugar Youth, kind of something that really, a theme that really works off of pop punk. They really went with. Junkies on a High was another song that was like kind of like a mellow tone they wanted to go for, because they're talking about a stoner getting high and watching the world crumble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perfect go with that mellow vibe. And then, oh yeah, we talked about it enough with that poppy sound, kind of
Yeah.
with, giving social media the attention on that one. Definitely worked out. Sugar Youth, my favorite song because it had that classic Green Day construction that I was expecting. My biggest dislikes on this one, so where I kind of like, okay, I'm definitely putting this further down, was the fact that I was expecting this to bring some balls back to, that pop rock scene, and I just didn't see it there.
Mhm.
And I thought they really failed on that. And it's something that we've seen them do it before, so I know they're capable of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting them to, remake American Idiot and have that same kind of, basically like had that same kind of power behind it. But I was just expecting more from them in terms of that. And one other thing that I really couldn't stand was just kind of like, even the themes they went off of, I get it, but it's just, they went very safe with the themes. They spent a lot of time on a lot of themes they've already covered in a lot of different songs. So I'm like, oh, okay. So just at points, it kind of felt bland to me. And I think the biggest reason, again, is I've got to talk about the no balls thing, because it's just like, I just didn't feel them there. And if I was looking for an album so far that's come out this year that really has that, bring balls back to rock and like even metal too, even though it was a punk rock band that did it, I thought Anti-Flag's 2020 Vision that came out like 3 weeks ago, it had, I think it was like 11 songs, 31 minutes, so very similar in time frame, where it was only 5 minutes longer than this one. But I just thought, they went much more political, but it was just gruffer, harder, and I thought it was just more raw. And I just thought, okay, now that's what I was expecting when it comes to bring balls back. This one, definitely not so much.
Yeah. I think compared to pop and pop rock and what a lot of the mainstream considers to be rock, I think in comparison to that, this definitely, had some balls to it. But yeah, it definitely could have gone harder and more heavy, no, not necessarily heavy, but you know what I mean.
Well, now that you just said that, I have to, let's kind of like even take a relook at this. Like, I do agree with you on that, where you take a look at bands like Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco, Portugal the Man, and then Maroon 5. And when you look at like the stuff that they're like that pop rock on the radio, and it's so non-substancy. There's really nothing there. It's very similar, like a lot of pop music too, where it's just like bubblegum kind of like la 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 kind of stuff. And this definitely has a lot more than those do. So maybe, bringing balls back to pop rock, maybe they kind of did that a little bit, because it definitely has much more substance behind it. But in terms of rock music overall, like Anti-Flag's album this year, they basically pulled that off. And I know there's a couple other ones coming up in the next couple of weeks that could even take that even further. Like, I'm not sure what to expect from Hollywood Undead next week. I'm not sure what to expect from The Word Alive, but I think theirs is going to be pretty good. Also got, for metalcore, you got Amity Affliction coming up. You got August Burns Red coming up. In This Moment's also coming up. And very polarizing one that I'm going to be looking forward to talking about is Five Finger Death Punch's new album will come
I'm
up.
looking forward to that too, yeah.
Code Orange has one, Silverstein has one, and this is all within the next 2 months.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's definitely a lot more substance to be had, and a lot more albums that can really kind of have a lot more balls behind them, I should say. But versus those albums and what Green Day can do, Green Day still has that place in pop culture. Because,
definitely.
Everyone in their 20s and 30s just remembers how big American Idiot was. So that's always going to be there.
Yeah. 100%.
Plus, it also doesn't hurt that My Chemical Romance came back and more people are paying attention to it. So, yay!
Yeah. Definitely.
So, we went through a good amount with Father of All Motherfuckers, and again, it'll be interesting to see kind of when the end of the year comes, where this album eventually ranks, especially on everyone else's rankings when it comes to the best albums of the year, worst albums of the year, most surprising, most disappointing, where it's going to come on my list as well. If I had to guess right now for myself, I definitely think it'll end up appearing on that most disappointing list, because I usually do 5 albums on that one. Worst, I also do 5 albums on that one. I'm not sure if this one's going to appear on there yet, because I've already got one on there that's sticking out there. Okay, can anyone beat this one yet?
Uh-huh.
So we'll see what happens. One other thing about this album that someone actually mentioned to me, and I totally agree with them because this person I thought the same way on this other album and this one, was this is like Papa Roach's "Who Do You Trust" from last year, where we were expecting something that we know they can do, where the band's kind of has reinvented themselves at some point, but then they end up going down a road that was more or less, in our opinion, a road they maybe shouldn't have gone down.
I didn't listen to much of that album, but I do remember being a little disappointed with that as well. I was expecting something a bit harder, and it kind of wasn't.
Yeah, so was I. I was expecting something where they went a lot more like softer and more pop centric on that album for their style. Whereas if you went back to 2015 with Face Everything and Rise or Fear on that album, they completely reinvented themselves, going more, straight like hard rock and more of a different like hard rock Papa Roach style than that new metal style that they had. And I thought it was a fantastic move. I mean, there's songs on there like the titular song Face Everything and Rise, Falling Apart is fantastic. Their song Gravity with Maria Brink is probably the best song on that album. Is probably the best song they made the whole entire decade.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Hollywood Horror. Hollywood Horror was a fun song. No, that came out in 2009, so that doesn't even count.
Oh, yeah.
Then it's definitely Gravity.
Yeah.
Alrighty, enough with that. So I want to talk to you while I still have you for about another like 15-ish minutes, because I know you got to make sure Atomic Battery is going to be in the forefront. So what was your journey into starting a band, and how'd you kind of come up with the name Atomic Battery?
Okay, actually, so I am not an original member, so I actually don't know how they came up with the name. But I'll tell you like how I met them and how I got into them. So I moved to Jersey like a year and a half ago, and where I was living before there, which was in the Caribbean, there was not much musical opportunities at all, especially for a metalhead. Like if you're like a reggae artist or R&B, like there's a little bit there, but metal, come on. I was like one of the only metalheads on the whole island. So we moved here, and immediately I was like, all right, I'm looking for music opportunities because there's going to be more metalheads here. I'm going to look around. And so I found this program, which it's a franchise, called School of Rock. And what they do is, they have like two approaches to it. You can take lessons, and then with those lessons, you also do shows. And so what they do is they have 4 shows every season, and they group students together, in those shows. And it's like 15 students per show. But, it's not 15 people on every song. We do about 20 songs. It's like, 4 people on this song, 5 people on this song, stuff like that. So everyone gets a somewhat even amount of songs, also depending on how much that person actually wants to be on. And we rehearse for about 4 months, and we do a show. We just actually recently did a show. Our most recent show that I was in was 21st Century Heavy Millennium. So, all 2000s metal, which I really enjoyed. It was a lot of really heavy stuff. And I was on like 11 songs, and it was really vocal heavy for me, which was cool because I'm one of the only ones who knows how to scream. So, and we're doing 21st century stuff, so there's a lot of screaming with that. So I was on a lot of the screaming songs, which is interesting contrast to when I first joined School of Rock about a year ago, and we did 90s metal. That was my first show with them. And that one, I was much less experienced with vocals. I was kind of just getting started. I sort of knew like some like harsher vocals, but not really. So I was more on clean stuff, but I was mostly on guitar stuff. So that was an interesting like contrast. I really enjoyed that. I really grew as a musician. So how I met Atomic Battery is all of the members of Atomic Battery were in both the metal shows. And so I became friends with them through that, through rehearsals and shows and whatnot. And then eventually, we got talking about like bands and stuff and how I wanted to join a band or form a band or something like that. And they were like, hey, we need another guitarist. Do you want to join? I was like, yeah, sure. I'm down. Something I've been wanting for a while. That was about November of 2019. And so since then we've done a few shows together, done rehearsals. It's been a lot of fun.
Sounds awesome. Another question, because you're talking about you have been
feature on those tracks, screaming. What have been your main, or what bands or what artists have been your main inspiration behind those unclean screams? And also, what bands have been your biggest inspiration? What bands do you like to listen to?
Let's see. So for the longest time, I've been saying my favorite band's been Metallica. And I don't know if that's necessarily true anymore. It's hard to say because, yeah, for a while I was super into Metallica. Still am. But I'm also really into other bands like Megadeth, Slipknot, Lamb of God, who else? Disturbed. I mean, Testament. There's so many just good stuff. It's hard to say like who my number one is anymore. But as far as like screams go, Corey Taylor is definitely one of my top screaming influences. And what I love about Corey is that he can scream like a demon and sing like an angel. You know, he's got those really nice, brutal screams, but then he can also just sing super well, super melodic, super rich. And that's kind of what I want to do with my own voice. Also Randy Blythe, really, really good. And then there's also like distorted vocals, like not necessarily screaming, just like singing with pitch, but with distortion. And, you know, there's Avenged Sevenfold, Trivium, Metallica, Megadeth, you know, love those bands as well. So vocally, I guess in general, those bands are probably some of my biggest, inspirations.
Okay, so you're definitely going off of like some of the core four, like the big four of thrash metal. When you brought in Megadeth, you brought Metallica. Those metal bands are kind of like in more of that like new metal scene, but went a lot harder, that were more metal, like Disturbed and Slipknot. Mm-hmm. And then even bringing in some more of those like current top metal bands, or like with Avenged Sevenfold, and probably the most recent one that you brought up, or the newest one that you brought up, was Trivium. Mm-hmm. And what I always like hearing about when I ask people like what their favorite band is, and I like what you kind of said about that too, where for the longest time you said it was Metallica, but you're not really sure. And as time goes on, yeah, tastes do change.
Yeah.
Because like when I was when I started really getting into all this stuff, my favorite band was Disturbed. I mean, you couldn't, like in middle school, you couldn't pull me away from it. Mm-hmm. Like that's all I wanted to listen to. And then as time went on and I got into high school, like I didn't listen to Disturbed nearly as much. If I had to rate Disturbed in my top 10 favorite bands, they're gonna end up at number 2. But it's like they're not number 1 anymore, and the band that's been number 1 for 11 years now has been Rise Against. Because I can't get enough punk rock. It's too good.
Yeah. So yeah, those are my probably my top. And I've really enjoyed just music in general. I picked up guitar about 3 years ago. I've been singing for a little over 1 year, and it's all been just super fun. And I've grown so much as a musician just moving here and having all these opportunities I didn't have before. And yeah, it's just been great. I've been writing songs and performing songs and rehearsing and meeting up with other musicians, stuff I never had before, which I am really grateful for.
Okay, so now that you've gone through all of that, at this point in time right now, as we're shooting this with Atomic Battery, where do you guys stand today in terms of basically, like what kind of shows are you playing? What's kind of going on for you guys at this very moment?
Well, we're prepping for a gig near the end of February, which it's going to be an open mic. So it's nothing like headlining with our names on it, but we're just doing that to, get a bit more recognition. We're doing some, social media stuff. We're working on a demo right now, which is coming up. That'll be fun. So yeah, that's about where we're standing. It'll be our first demo, and yeah, playing at we played at, and also just like in general where we play. I mean, we played at bars, and I mean, in School of Rock together. It was cool. One of the School of Rock songs we were in, it just happened to be that all 4 of us were on the song that they chose. And when we do live shows, we do a mix of covers and original songs. And we're like, hey, you know what? We'll put that song on our covers list, because we just happened to all be on that song for School of Rock.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea too, especially when you're trying to grow as a band. It's one thing you don't want to, if you play all of just your stuff, especially, at, like some house shows or like, like bars or just like very small venues. It's because I've seen it happen a couple of times too. Just a lot of times it's, people are going to be interested to hear what you have. But one thing that's going to make them kind of stay and listen to that is if you're playing stuff that they know.
Yeah, I agree.
And then they can kind of can get another sense of like who you are as musicians based off of hearing like bands that you were inspired by. So if you cover like a Metallica song, then people will be able like, okay, kind of how does their sound compare to Metallica? Mm-hmm. And it's something where, I mean, I've seen other bands like that do, it's like, oh, we're just going to do straight covers. Well, that's great because people know all the songs, but I mean, you're only going to go so far as a cover band.
I agree.
And then I've seen bands go out there and like, oh, we're just going to play all our own stuff. That's fantastic too. But then I've seen complaints about, oh, why don't people stay? And it's, well,
you don't have that connection. Yeah.
You don't have that connection yet. You got to find a way to build that connection with your audience.
Yeah.
And by starting out with some cover songs and going into like having a healthy mix between cover songs that the people are going to know and your stuff. I mean, but then you always got to call out, what's your stuff and what's a cover song kind of thing. But
yeah,
that's got to, I mean, cause you're the vocalist, that's kind of on you. So just make sure I'd say you're always
yeah.
Excuse me. Make sure you're doing that.
Yeah.
And now, cause we are in February of 2020, when this comes out, we'll be kind of closer towards the middle of it. So at the end of the year, you got 10.5 months on December 31st, 2020, which I can't believe I'm already talking about that because, I mean, we just got through 2019, but then again, wild. Time flies when you're having fun. So at the end of 2020, what is the goal for you and Atomic Battery?
That's a good question. That's also a hard question to answer because I don't know where I'll be with Atomic Battery. I don't know if I'll still be with Atomic Battery. And part of the problem is I'm a senior in high school. They're all a bit younger than me. When I graduate, I'm going to go to college, and I'm probably not going to go to college in the state. So I don't know if I'll still be in the band. So I don't know. That's hard. I want to still be in the band, but like, I don't know if that's, practical. So I think for me, as far as Atomic Battery goes, just be as good of a musician as I can, play as many shows as I can with them, build that just rapport with them, and our reputation as a band, just try to grow us. I think that is, and they'll be fine without me. They were good without me before. But I'm just grateful for, being with them now, and I'm glad that we all mesh really well. We all get along. We all have a good kind of on-stage connection together, which I think is really important for a band. Like, you gotta have that. You gotta have a connection with your bandmates. And if you don't, I mean, you can still play, but it's so much better when you can kind of feel for each other, and get that, just vibe for each other. And if something goes wrong, you can all just like signal with each other and still play the song, and still you can adapt better to problems if you have a connection. And that I really like. And then when I go off to college, I think just developing my solo stuff, writing songs. I'm hoping to meet people that would want to start a band. That would be cool. So I don't know. We'll see where it takes me. Just develop myself, develop my skills.
Already awesome. And I know you said you got a hard stop, and we got about 5 minutes until that hard stop, so you can go and practice with Atomic Battery. But I just want to say a couple of things before, send you on your way. Okay. And this is something that I've seen, from, just seeing all these different interviews from all these different bands and trying to build up the My Song Day Rock 2000 Day stuff for myself, build a podcast through it. And one thing you're going to end up seeing is like over time, there's going to be times where you just feel like, nothing's working, it's not growing as much as I wanted it to. Why isn't this working? Those times are going to happen. And as a musician, it's going to happen. There are plenty of musicians that went through that kind of a time. When you said playing as much as possible, playing as many live shows as possible, I always think of that as like a day to remember trope, because one of the reasons they got big and why they got noticed was because it was like every single night they were playing a live show somewhere in Florida. whether it was Ocala or wherever else is around Ocala, because I really don't know where Ocala is in the state of Florida. But they were constantly honing their craft, and you're going to get people that are going to come around that say, oh, your stuff's not good. Oh, this, that. They're going to try and put you down as much as possible. And I'm not trying to scare you away from anything. I'm just trying to be as upfront as possible, because when it comes to a younger musician, a lot of times you're not necessarily going to see that right away, but as time goes on and all of a sudden you're starting to play, you're going to those bar shows, and it's like some people might like kind of get on you like, oh, boo, you sucker. It's some people that you meet, it's like, oh, I don't really like your stuff, trying to put you down. One thing you got to always remember is you got to focus on you. So kind of, and also it's, if they're really taking the time to just bash you, and they're not really, it's like, you say, well, why don't you like it? Oh, cause it sucks. I think that says more about the other person, because they're spending their energy and free time, instead of trying to maybe create something for themselves, they're trying to spend it on trying to put you down, because maybe they're just as miserable. Yeah. So in the end,
it's not even constructive criticism. It's just like, oh, you suck. And it's like, okay.
No. See, if it was something like all of a sudden someone came up to you guys and said, hey, I really don't think this sound is the right sound. You're asking, oh, why do you think that? And they give you a list, and they kind of like go through and explain their reasoning. Then it's something where you can take, then it's okay. Then you kind of take that criticism as it comes to understand it and be like, okay, maybe we're not seeing something that you saw. You never know, but always kind of make sure you're true to yourself and make sure that you enjoy the process of building up yourself as a musician. That is the main key, is enjoying the process of it all. Don't just focus on the end goal, but enjoy the process of going through it, because I know they always say it's like half the fun is the journey and not the destination. It's like, well, if you really enjoy the journey, the destination's going to come.
Yeah.
But you just got to enjoy every bit of it, from all the highs of, making great music, and all the lows of, maybe things not going so well.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome, because I've told this to a couple other people. I mean, I've read it from many different books about like just people talking about this kind of stuff, trying to prepare myself to go in and do this like other thing, like what I'm doing myself. So it's definitely something where I love passing that along, just because it's shown to be true, and I think that's also something that anybody can hear at any given time, to make sure that it's, if you still love doing it, and people are like, oh, maybe you shouldn't be doing it, but you're absolutely in love, still making music and still trying as hard as you can, and that's what you want to do. Yeah. By all means, go all in on it.
Yeah, that's what I plan to do.
Yeah, because you only get one shot in life, so don't waste it.
Exactly. Yep.
Alrighty, well, I'm gonna let you get off to band practice, Matthew. So thank you very much for being on the Chord Progression podcast. When this episode comes out, so for everyone else that's listening to the whole entire thing, because it's going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and you can watch this interview, if you guys are listening on any of those, on YouTube as well, because we'll put that up there so you can see Matthew and I kind of chit-chat and having a good time that way. Anything for his stuff, for his personal stuff, and for Atomic Battery, if whatever social media accounts we can find for him, wherever he's going to provide for us, we'll put that in the description. We'll put that in all the posts, so you guys can go check them out.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Alrighty, awesome. All right, Matt, we're gonna send you on your way. So, alrighty, man. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me. See ya.
All right, see ya.
Well, guys, that was our interview with Matthew Kalb out of New Jersey. His band Atomic Battery. Go check them out on Instagram. I know they have the Instagram stuff. If you see the preview video on Instagram, you'll get we'll tag them for sure, so you can listen to all their stuff, see all their stuff, and you can kind of get behind this band as well. Thank you for Matthew for coming and chatting with us. Next week, I got another album we can talk about, and this one I am kind of nervous for, because it is one of my favorite bands that's coming out with a new album, and it is Hollywood Undead. I really like Hollywood Undead. I've liked them since I first heard them back in like 2011, 2012. And their last album, 5 or V, there was parts I liked, but there's a couple parts of like, what the heck is going on? So I'm curious to see how New Empire turns out, because it's coming out on Valentine's Day. So as you can tell, how am I going to be spending my Valentine's Day? You guys already know how I'm spending it. Album review time. I don't have a date. I never do. Come on, Kevin, you know you don't have a date. What are you talking about? So, in the end, with that, I will also be talking about a show I get to go see next week. What show, Kevin? Well, the winner of our best album of the year and number 2 on our song of the year. Who is it? It's Alter Bridge. I can see Alter Bridge for the first time. I can see Mark Tremonti play for the second time. Looking forward to it, going back to concerts. And guys, that is going to be it for me. So once again, thank you for listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. Thank you to Matthew Kalb for joining us today. Absolutely love it. Absolutely thrilled to have him. I'd love to have him back at some point in time. So we'll see when we can make that happen. But until then, my friends, you guys, thank you for listening. This is awesome that you guys listen to all this stuff. Absolutely floored that you still listen to it. And keep on rocking. So, this is Kevin from the My Sunday Rock 2000 today Chord Progression Podcast. And you know how I end all these videos. I'm not going to flip my hat. But you guys know I end the podcast with a big resounding see ya.